Good afternoon, my fellow Toastmasters and guests. Welcome to the 2022 District 47 Reimagined Conference. You are so incredibly lucky because this room has a phenomenal speaker and, of course, a fantastic production team. Let's first introduce you to our production team. I am your facilitator, Toastmaster Sarah Cheris. Also with us today is our timer, Yovanka Paul, Distinguished Toastmaster. Also, our chat monitor, Sharia Hasty, and your technology wizard, Derek Garcia-Roll. Be sure to rename yourself to display your name and district. In case you haven't done this before, to rename yourself, right-click on your picture. You'll see some dots, and select Rename at the very bottom. Put your name, comma, DTM if you're a Distinguished Toastmaster, and your district as D, and the number. And hint, hint, we're District 47. We are incredibly thankful for this session sponsor, Florida Power and Light. And our chat monitor will share some information in the chat for you to review. As you can see, we are in our very own Zoom room, and any questions you have, you should enter into the chat with a question mark in front of it so we can easily see your question. Now, by doing that, those are the questions we will ask the speaker during the Q&A towards the end of our session. Any questions the chat monitor can answer, they will do so as well. Just so you know, we're on a tight timeline, so let's go ahead and get started. It is my pleasure to introduce Distinguished Toastmaster Marlene Smith. Do you give a great first impression? The first impression is those first few moments of verbal communication. The sweaty palms, the lump in your throat, butterflies in the stomach time. What is the trick to a great first impression? Distinguished Toastmaster Marlene Smith turns the fear of public speaking in those first few seconds into joyful excitement. She has a long career of sharing her thoughts with many diverse audiences. As a family physician, she has given both community and professional presentations on various subjects. She presently is an adjunct assistant professor teaching nutrition at the graduate level. She is a published author with chapters in medical textbooks. Her poetry book titled Serenity View, Poems and Images of the Blue Ridge Mountains was published in April 2021. Her articles have been published in the Sunshiner magazine for District 47 and other local magazines. For additional information, you may go to www.dr for Dr. MarleneMD.com. And I'll go ahead and we'll put that in the chat as well. Learn the nuances of a great first impression, making every presentation exciting. Looking forward to giving you a great first impression. I leave you with Distinguished Toastmaster Marlene Smith.
Memorable first impressions, a great first impression, a lasting first impression. Isn't this the goal of every conversation and communication we have, be it one-to-one, in a virtual room such as this, or in person? The answer is yes. We want to make a great, memorable, lasting first impression. Why? The first impression really determines the outcome of the meeting. In healthcare, the first impression determines if the patient will listen to the advice, take the advice, come back, refer, and put a positive review online. We want to give a great first impression for ourselves. It puts us in the right mood to give the right talk, the right energy we have for the first impression. Travel with me now as we go through First Impressions Reimagined. This has to do with a very odd, ha ha ha, chuckle, amazing method called the 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. There's one speaker, one first impression you get. Even if you had seen the person yesterday or 3 weeks ago or 3 years ago, The first impression occurs at the beginning of a communication or conversation. The first impression is given in the first 3 to 5 words within 7 seconds. And then a pause for fewer than 9 seconds. So everybody can be on the same road. Everybody can connect and know what journey you're taking them on. How was my first impression? Using the words memorable, lasting, and great. Hopefully good. Hopefully you'll stay with me as we travel this road and you won't, what I call, screen out. Many years ago, I was pre-pandemic, a moderator for a continuing medical education company. They sent me around the country 5 times a year, and I would go and run their day sessions for continuing medical education for healthcare providers in the primary care field. There I was introducing speakers' lunch breaks, and one day, 10 minutes before the afternoon session, the representative from the medical education came walking right up to me and looked right into my eyes. This was a live session. This was pre-pandemic. And within 7 seconds, she said the following 3 words. This is a true story. She said, "The speaker died." Those are her first 3 words to me. The speaker died. Here I was in the healthcare profession, going to announce the afternoon session, and I was just told those famous 3 words, the speaker died. My mind went crazy. My mouth dropped open. I had no words. I'm thinking, oh my, I'm a speaker this afternoon and I'm alive. I'm speaking to another speaker and he's alive. Who died? I just was able to say in a hoarse voice, what? And she goes, the speaker died, Dr. Wolf, the speaker died. You have to tell the audience this. There'll be a delay in the afternoon session. And as I was coughing and hacking and my eyes were open, she goes, I said, the speaker died? Like we need a funeral, a eulogy? We need to stop this? She goes, no, the audio speaker died. The hotel has got to replace the audio speaker. There'll be a delay in the afternoon session. Woof. I was glad I didn't have to go to any funeral then, or one of my friends had passed away. What did that tell me? She went on to say, please announce it to the group. That told me she didn't know her audience. Talking about death and a person to a healthcare provider? She didn't know her audience. Asking me to say the same 3 words to a room full of healthcare providers? No. I went up and said, there will be a delay in the afternoon session. We're having audio technical problems and the audio speaker needs to be replaced by the hotel. Calmly, I said that. But how was my first impression? This happened over 5 years ago, and I still remember those words and my reaction. That's what happens with words. People remember the words. One speaker, one first impression in the first 3 to 5 words. I tend, when I do my speeches and talking, I tend to match the title with my first 3 words, telling the people in the audience where I'm going with my presentation. It's very similar to that movie from last century where Robin Williams goes, "Good morning, Vietnam." 3 words in less than 7 seconds. What do you learn from those 3 words? It's a happy time, good. It's morning, where you're located, and the road you're going to be on. And that's one of my secrets when I present. If I get nervous, if I get anxious, if I freeze, I would go and say, good afternoon, D47. And everybody would smile and know what road we're on and where we're going to go. 7 seconds, that's all you really have. There was a question before this session started, whether this 7 seconds is also online or in person. It is what I consider both. And it comes from Julian Treasure. I have the reference here at the end of the PowerPoint that goes in details and talks about his TED report. But let's go a little further because there are things that have to be done before we even speak our first word. As Toastmasters, this is my most favorite quote. The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place, by George Bernard Shaw, last century. Like that lady with the speaker died, she thought she was communicating to me, and she wasn't. Many times, communications happen like that. This reminds me of a story from a documentary on Elsa Dorfman. Elsa Dorfman was a portrait photographer, again, last century, that she did portraits with a Polaroid camera. Not little tiny Polaroid camera portraits, but she got a 2x4 picture using a very large Polaroid camera. This was the state-of-the-art technology in the 1970s and 80s. She tells a story in her documentary how she's in her gallery and a young woman walks in all smiling and all happy and says to her, "Are you Elsa Dorfman, the photographer?" And Elsa answers, "Yes," all in glow. And the lady goes on to say, "Oh, it's so pleased to meet you. I just rented an apartment and the prior tenants left one of your photographs there, and I love it." Out she walks. Do you think Elsa was happy? Elsa was not happy, she said in her documentary. The person came in a happy, jubilant mood, wanting to give a compliment. But Elsa took it as, why didn't the previous tenants value my photograph enough to take it with them? A question that's out there. The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that has taken place. As Toastmasters, we want to get rid of this illusion. Before we even get to that 1, 3, 5, 7, 9 method, before our first words, there are things that we mentally and physically have to do. We have to prepare and practice. As an educator and professional presenter, I practice in front of my refrigerator. In fact, recently, the person I did the presentation on, which was ethics and implicit bias, said, "Marlene, how do you practice?" I said, "In front of my refrigerator." And he chuckled because you must have a smart refrigerator. I guess if the refrigerator could talk, it would be smart. And knowing your audience. Who are you talking to? Where is it at? What are the surroundings? What is the location? When I was a moderator, I would always walk the room ahead of time, looking where I was going, the steps onto the podium, who was around, how I was going to introduce people. As a moderator, I learned a tremendous amount by watching speakers. Here I was one day in Atlanta, Georgia, listening to this dry medical knowledge, information, and presentation. And I hate to say it, but the speaker was even drier. I said, "Oh, if I ever see this title on the agenda again, this is time for me to take a coffee break." A week later, in Raleigh, North Carolina, the same program, but a different speaker. I knew it was my job to listen and introduce the speaker. I had in my mind, coffee break after he got started. He got started, and I stood there in the back of the room, amazed. He had the audience eating out of his hands. They were connected from the first 7 seconds and 3 to 5 words. He was using all his body, prancing around, and to this day, 7 years later, I remember the topic. It was so impactful how he presented. I was honored to see the same deck presented one way and the other way. It was amazing. Afterwards, he came down and I said, "You were amazing. How did you do it?" He told me his 3 secrets, which I will now share with you all, having you not going through the pain of the first session and the second session. Number 1, he said, "My mother made me take debate in high school." Well, mothers do that. That's part of the mother, the parenting, the fathering thing. All right, I could understand that. I said the second thing, he said, "I always connect with my audience by finding out a detail about the city I am in." He said, "Just last week, I was in Philadelphia and I started my presentation by Philadelphia, home of the Liberty Bell. I am free here, free to give my speech." Wherever he goes, he went on to say, he looks up with Dr. Google, of course, the famous doctor, looks up information about his city and uses it in his presentation. Uses it. Brilliant, I said. He connects with that audience. Amazing. And the third thing he told me was Toastmasters. I went, "Toastmasters? I hadn't joined yet." He says, "That's where you learn. That's where you practice, Marlene. That's where you hone your skills for public speaking." And still to this day, I remember how great he was in his speech, how everybody just paid absolute attention and he made it simple and fun. He educated, he engaged, he empowered, and he entertained all at the same time. Amazing, knowing his audience, surroundings, and location. And the last important point is to warm up your voice. Your voice, that instrument we have here. Yes, Julia Treasure says, warm up your voice instrument. Very early when I went to Toastmasters, I was in Coral Springs and I go to one of the early Friday clubs with my husband, a Toastmaster. I walk in, remembering that I'm a healthcare professional, and I hear the following. I think, oh my God, somebody is choking. I may have to do the Heimlich maneuver. I walk over and look at this gentleman's face. He's not blue. I go, "Are you okay? Are you choking?" He goes, "No, warming up my voice box." He doesn't want to be hoarse. He wants to make sure the tongue and the saliva and everything flow. This all happens, Toastmasters and guests, before you say your first word. We are preparing our mind and body to go and give a great first impression. Then the audience puts their eyes on you, just like you put your eyes on me before the session or when the session started. What does the audience see? What is their first sighting? Did you make a good fashion decision? Is it a pool party? Is it a sleepover party? Is it professional? Your fashions do state on what is your gait and what is your posture. And that all important smile. Smile with your mouth and your eyes and your face. My first Toastmaster meeting in Coral Springs, they said to me over 4.5 years ago, "Marlene, you want to do table topics?" I said, yes. I had no idea what I was volunteering for. Okay. There I was. I was called up for table topics. What did I do? Believe it or not, I was shy then. I slinked up, round-shouldered, shuffled up to the front, says in a meek voice the answer, and shuffled back. Somebody sitting next to me said, Marlene. I said, yes. They go, own the stage. I looked at the fellow Toastmaster, own the stage. When you go up anywhere, when you start anything, you are the leader. Stand up straight, have a firm gait, go up there with good posture, smile, and portray confidence. This not only helps the audience to know who the leader is, helps them have confidence, but it helps you to have confidence. The hardest thing for me has been to smile. Now, why? I was in the healthcare field for over 30 years, and it didn't matter what was said to me. I had to be non-judgmental, a flat affect, which makes me a great timer for all of the Toastmaster contests, but it makes it harder for me when I give a presentation. So smiling, it relaxes you, it helps the audience, it's a happy time, it portrays confidence. We're not quite on the stage yet, but we are getting there. As we review and remember, the messages that are received are a combination of 3 items. That voice tone, we can tell on the telephone when somebody is really, really upset. Having an uplifting, positive voice tone is important. The verbal words, choose your words carefully. The speaker died was not a good choice of words when talking to a healthcare provider. And what about the nonverbal body language? Our smile, our eye contact, our hands, our gait, our posture. All of this needs to align with your message that you're giving today. It needs to be uplifting. It needs to be positive. So here we are now. I think I am ready to give a great first impression. Now that I have the sighting, I know the audience, I know the location, I know my stance, I have decided on my where, I have decided on my topic, and I have, if it's a speaker, memorized, know what my first 3 to 5 words are to set everybody, the audience, on the same road you want to travel on. None of this, thank you very much stuff. We've all heard that. That is not a great way of giving a first impression. And this works not only in speakers, but if you're going to one-to-one person, if you're doing impromptu, you can smile. You could say, good afternoon. Isn't it beautiful outside? The sun is shining, or the rain. I can't wait for those rain clouds to split open and that sunshine in. Being positive opens up the world to you. Occasionally, however, there are challenges. There are challenges in the first 7 seconds. Yes, challenges. One time I was going up on the podium, and I get up on the podium. There was a loose wire and I trip and fall. Boop. Somebody helps me up. I was fine. I smile and I said, usually at the end of the session, I take questions from the floor, but I guess this is a good time now. I added humor to a moment. Adding humor for me always helps to break the craziness, the challenges, changing the challenges into opportunities when those first 7 seconds just are not going right. I recently did a spoken word poetry and storytelling reading at an assisted living facility. It was wonderful. I had them all laughing for half an hour. But in the first 7 seconds, something happened. I was introduced and I was ready to start the topic when the TV went on miraculously with a loud voice from their station. I looked, I said, well, right now we're going to take a vote. Who wants to hear the TV? And who wants to hear my presentation? And with the smile, everybody knew I was okay with this whole thing until they turned off the TV and I went further. Another time, another spoken word presentation, I went and I said, today's topic, well, I didn't start today's topic. I went, apple and chocolate cake. Isn't that a great combination? Chocolate and apples. And out there, somebody said, the food here is lousy. What are you going to do about it, Dr. Wolf? I said, well, let's take a vote on a scale of lousiness from 1, a little lousy, to 10, bad, really bad lousy. How lousy is the food? Chocolate cake and apples are great. And then I went further, helping to cut the moment, recognizing the person's opinion, but yes, going forward. Or when I really get stuck, when I really have a tough situation, I will use that Robin Williams, good morning, Vietnam energy to connect everybody and to go forward. This works well, even in one-to-one conversations. 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. That really odd time when you're thinking, I'm just one person. And believe it or not, fellow Toastmasters, I was very nervous about today's session. I said, I don't know if I could do this. And then I said, yes, you can. Give them a great first impression and go forward. Find those magic 3 to 5 words and go forward with what you're going to say within the first 7 seconds. And then pause for everybody to catch up with you. I have been asked, as I'm a mentor for a student at Florida Atlantic University, FAU, in their Business Mentor program, how do you give a good impression, first impression with a job interview? If you're being interviewed, what is the secret to giving a good impression? I thought, okay, this is a very good topic, and I thought it'll be pertinent to add this to today's first impression. Very similar to the 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. You need to smile, prepare, practice. Go online and look at the questions that have been asked for this job. Search out from Dr. Google the top 10 questions and write down your assets and how you would answer those questions. Have important things you want to say. And when a question is asked by an interviewer, and nowadays it's usually an interview committee, there's usually 2 or more on the interview committee. You can quickly, if you can, write it down and start your answer by repeating back the question. Why? Number 1, it sets your mind on the road of how to answer it. Second of all, it tells the interviewer or the interview committee that yes, you are listening closely to everything that is going on. You understand the question and you know what is going on. It sets you in the right direction. And if towards the end they haven't come to something you really want to tell them about, something about you that you feel is very important for this job, you can use that in an answer. If they ask you about C, you can say, my job training and experience in A and B brought me to my expertise in the area of C. Therefore, having them recognize your job experience. Above all, smile and listen closely and watch your words and your tone and your rhythm. Everything that is said here today can be applied to an interview or an interview question. The last thing that I think is important in a first impression, if you're on a one-to-one conversation, is to use the person's first name. That is what I call a magical moment. Everybody likes to hear their first name. They like to be recognized as an individual person. And I actually use this as a memory skill test for myself. When I go to a restaurant, I'll ask the server, even if they don't have a badge, their first name. And then I'll use it when they come back. Now, test my memory, but believe it or not, you get better service and they feel good about their job. They feel that they have been recognized as a person, an individual person, not just as your server, your attendee, your valet. Addressing them by their name can give a great first impression when you're on a one-to-one conversation. 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. One speaker, one great first impression, and it doesn't matter, in my opinion, if you've seen the person yesterday, the week before, 3 months ago, or 3 years ago. It's still a first impression at this conversation or communication. 3 to 5 words in the first 7 seconds, and then a pause for everybody to be on the same road. This is a list of my references, which are available upon request. At this time, I have left plenty of time for questions and answers and comments. And I would like to invite the facilitator, Sarah, to explain the questions that have come in through the chat. You're muted. Thank you. Somehow you're muted, Sarah, so I think the technical coordinator needs to unmute you. Thank you.
Just to repeat myself, thank you very much, Marlene, and thank goodness our speakers didn't die today. I love that story. When you first said the speakers died, my mind immediately went to where yours went. This, in the middle of COVID, the speaker died. Oh dear. But thank goodness it was just a technical issue. And of course, from observing the audience, I definitely saw how we enjoyed your speech. So if all you would like to show your appreciation to Marlene with hearts, some loud muted claps, go ahead and use those Zoom emojis. And I also love that great tip that you gave everyone, the 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. One speaker giving a first impression in the first 3 to 5 words within the first 7 seconds, then pause for fewer than 9 seconds. Wow. And that's definitely something that you get in the practice.
Yes, it does. It does work well. I know one of the questions, and I'll reiterate, that I saw before was there was a question about whether the system of 3 to 5 words, 7 seconds works virtually and in person. And my answer is yes. I think they were mentioning 30 seconds to give a first impression. And from all of my reading and from my seeing and from my knowledge, that's a little long. 30 seconds to a minute, minute and a half is one of those short little videos, but people will know within the first 3 to 5 words in 7 seconds, similar to reading a book. People pick up the book, the first 2 or 3 sentences in a novel, they will know whether they are hooked or not hooked. So I think the 7 seconds applies to virtual and in person.
I actually have some questions for you. So it's going to be kind of table topic style. And the first one is a little bit of a double-barreled question. What would you suggest for someone who is a new Toastmaster and maybe a little shy to grab their audience's attention in the icebreaker? Versus what would you recommend to somebody who's a more experienced Toastmaster to grab their audience's attention?
Think about what your main topic is. What is the title of your speech? And use that as the first 3 to 5 words. I like using the title like this first impression reimagined in the first 3 or 5 words. Nothing enigmatic or people have to think about. So an icebreaker could be me, myself, and I. What am I about? Or happily ever after. This is my goal in life. Keep it simple. Keep it upbeat. Keep it positive. But look at your icebreaker speech. What is the main idea that you want to say in the first 1 or 2 sentences? Match your beginning to your ending and have those as the first 3 to 5 words and those as the title of your speech. In an icebreaker, it can be a snippet like, I love orchids. And you can talk about how you love orchids, or it can be your entire life. I was born last century. Just putting the person on the road, take those couple of words that really are meaningful, make it your title, and make it your introduction. And that goes for experience and new Toastmasters. Memorize your first 3 to 5 words, your first line, and then things flow. Great questions.
And what would you suggest to somebody who's a very experienced Toastmaster to take it up a notch?
That depends on who you're presenting to. When I presented in Houston, I looked up, and the shuttle, and when they had problems, there was a call down to this station, the space station down there to NASA, and they said, Houston, we had a problem. In the movie, they say, Houston, we have a problem. And I started my speech as, Houston, we have a problem. That's the movie version. But the real version is grabbing the audience and finding out what they're about. Where are you giving your presentation? Philadelphia, the Liberty Bell, home of the free. I'm so happy to be here and free to talk. You connect with your audience by their location and where they're at and what you're doing. And a Toastmaster can go and elevate at the next level with that connection.
That's a great tip. And one of the questions that we also had from our audience was, where would you find techniques on warming up your audience? That was one of the main points that you brought up.
In warming up, in Julia Treasure, I'll go back one slide. Whoops, it didn't go back. Okay, Julia Treasure, I'll start on the slide. Julian Treasure, Julian Treasure, Treasure, is a phenomenal speaker from England. And he does a TED Talk breakdown. And he talks all about presenting, warming up your vocal cords. I think Toastmaster magazine also has information about that, warming up your instrument. But he talks specifically about that. And it's about just opening the mouth, rolling the tongue, smiling, making all this clearing of the throat, making sure everything is fine to get your voice, your instrument, your muscle movement in the way. But they're out there. You can email me and I can send you the presentation. Thank you.
And that's especially helpful for those of us who make those 7:30 in the morning meetings where you may have not even spoken, and that may be your first spoken word in the entire day. I try to sing in my car before I get to the meeting sometimes, because at least that gets some of the muscles working in there.
Yes, not only do you get the muscles working, but you get the brain working. There was an interesting
Absolutely.
article today in the Harvard Business Review, and it came out today. I was talking to Andy Burns about that. The difference between a good presenter and a great presenter. The difference was the Harvard Business Review, the article, like I said, is today's date, was that a great presenter tells stories. A great presenter practices out loud. A good presenter just looks at the slides and practices in the mind. Many times when I practice out loud, the word doesn't flow right. I go, I got to change the word. This is some of the things that I learned from Matt Kinsey, from Coral Springs, the incoming international president. He told me, the word doesn't flow on your tongue, Marlene. change the word. Make sure your words flow. If your story, you don't want to say it because of the fact that it may insult somebody, you can change your story, the place, location, time, people, but you can't change your data. And so I have changed some stories to improve, but make sure practice out loud. Just like you were doing, Sarah, in the car singing, practice out loud to get the voice and the vocal cords ready.
Absolutely. And of course, with this transition to virtual, as you mentioned before, a lot of Toastmasters have been met with the challenge of how do you convey emotion? How do you convey excitement, or without, overusing your hands, or anything that may disturb too much within the small frame that we have in the virtual, in the Zoom world? What are some of the tips that you suggest to be able to convey emotion in an impactful way over video?
Emotions can be conveyed in that non-verbal way. The face tone, the lack of smile, the smile, the going in and out a little bit of the hands, and then that voice tone and pauses. The pauses are impactful. It makes people realize that this is an important point. Think about it. Are you on that road? As the voice goes up and down, if you're excited, your voice and your flow and your rhythm can go faster. If you want to be dramatic, go low and slow to be dramatic, and high and fast and energetic to be good. It really is all on the facial features that convey this type of situation and help with the emotions, that tone.
And tying in with that, one of the questions that we have from the audience is that sometimes in Zoom or other virtual meetings, people tend to panic if they're not hearing talking all the time. They think that their technology may be failing. So wouldn't the pause be shorter for virtual meetings?
I think the pause probably can be shorter for virtual meetings, but a pause gives the speaker a time to take a deep breath, gives everybody time to take a deep breath. And usually if you're speaking, you have a rhythm, you have a flow, the audience will understand about the pause. 9 seconds is really long, so that's why it's fewer than 9 seconds. But a pause is an important part of your rhythm and flow and the impact of it, especially if you're asking the audience to think about something. You need to give them time to think. If they don't have time to think and you're going on, they are going to miss your words. That is a big difference, Sarah and fellow Toastmasters, between writing information and speaking. Writing, the audience can read and reread it. Speaking, you have one time to get that information out there and to get that flowing right. So I initially write all of my speeches, but then when I read them, I realize I have written them to be read, not to be spoken. And then I change them to be in that spoken word.
That is a great tip as well. And throughout your presentation and also now in the Q&A section, you've mentioned some great tips that you've received from Matt Kinsey, from other fellow Toastmasters. What are some additional tips that you can share with us that have stuck with you throughout your Toastmasters journey?
The Toastmasters journey has been wonderful. And there's one tip that actually got published in the Toastmasters magazine. There's no such thing as perfection in public speaking. There's always this speech you want to give. Then there's the speech you gave. And then there's the speech I should have given. I've learned to take challenges and move them into opportunities. And each time I speak, I learn. As I said at the beginning, I am doing this not just to help educate the audience. I'm doing it to educate me. Whether there's one person in the audience, 200 people, 500 people, or 10. It is my journey. And I think every Toastmaster should understand there is no perfection in public speaking. And we all want to listen to what you have to say. Just say it. There's no right or wrong.
And the other question that I had, just with your personal experience, when did you know, what was that moment maybe that you felt, oh, wow, I learned this, or I earned this skill from Toastmasters, and it really helped take my speaking to the next level?
When did I learn that? Last year during the summer, I did a session through Toastmasters at Modern Medicine, for which it's a Modern Medicine Toastmasters, for which I have been coaching them since they started about 2.5 years ago. They started 2 months before the pandemic, and during the pandemic, I continued as their coach and their mentor. And I did a program with them presenting 4 educational speeches, the speech craft, for which I volunteered my husband, a Toastmaster. He did 1, and I did 3 others at Modern Medicine Toastmasters. I was away, it was online, and I said, I have to help them. They're such great people, and they're trying so hard in this corporate community to give the right information and to learn about speaking. I did that speech craft. We had a lot of guests, several guests. The club before the speech craft had 7 members. From my speech craft and my husband's 25% contribution, and I did 75%. At the end of those, and it's every 2 weeks, at the end of those couple months, they had gained another 6 members from those 6 weeks. I went on and I said to them at Modern Med, I said, I would like to be officially your coach. I want to make it official from Toastmasters. They went, oh, we would love for you to be our coach again, Marlene. You did such a great job. You've been here from the beginning. So they applied. Toastmasters goes, sorry, we can't give you a mentor or coach because you have 10 members. So all of a sudden I knew I was not doing this to get a Toastmaster coach. I was doing this to help other people, and I did. I helped that community go from 6 to 10. And the prior year, when I was president of Sailfish, I took that club and we went from 7 to 21 during my year as president. So I realized in doing what I naturally do and who I am, that's when I know Toastmasters taught me how to do this. And I recognized the importance of public speaking, not just for myself and my own education, but in teaching and to help to share it with everybody else. And it's been a wonderful journey, and I've met wonderful people. That's when I knew that was right. I am that guy in Raleigh, North Carolina, exciting the audience. I am not the one putting them to sleep in Atlanta, Georgia.
And it's as they say, sometimes you learn more by teaching than by learning. But that's absolutely amazing and an example to follow. We also have another question in the chat, which is, we're kind of getting close to those final questions. Where are you in relation to the stages of the butterfly in your Toastmasters and personal journey?
The butterfly becoming the cocoon. That's it, from the little cocoon coming out into the butterfly. Well, it's a hard thing to say. I'm not in the cocoon anymore. When I stood straight, had that gait, went in there, owned the stage, I was the butterfly. But I am still learning about the whole thing. I'm still growing. Recently at Easter, I was talking to my friend Lily. She's 5 years old. And she's bouncing up and down the chair as I'm talking to her, as 5-year-olds go do. And I said, Lily, what's your favorite color? And she said, rainbow. I go, rainbow? Like rainbow sprinkles on ice cream? She goes, yes, like rainbow sprinkles on ice cream. So I think my favorite time in being a butterfly is flitting around the rainbow, looking at everything in all of the colors and just enjoying the journey. So yes, I'm no longer in my cocoon, but I still have a long ways to go as far as traveling on the rainbow.
That's absolutely fabulous. And I hope in my continue, I've only been a Toastmaster for, I want to say, about 4 years. So how long have you been a Toastmaster?
5 years.
I hope in the next year I get to where you are, Marlene.
Thank you. It's a lot of practice.
It's a lot of practice, absolutely.
When I teach, I practice. I give presentations, I practice. I like to make people smile and entertain.
And that's a wonderful note to wrap up on. Wanted to check with our audience if you had any other questions at this time. I know we also wanted to take a group picture before everyone, before we close the session today. Should we go ahead and do that at this time?
Yes, we can. If everyone will turn on their cameras as much as possible. Fill the room, fill the room, fill the room. Oh, look at those beautiful faces. I tell you, this beats a steak at lunchtime any day. The lovely faces that are in this room. Just keep smiling from me. And Dr. Marlene, once again, thank you so very much. Pedro, can you turn on your camera? Are you stealing time from work to be with us? Tora, I see your name. Can I see that face? Andy, can you turn that camera back on? Look at Ivanka smiling. Smiling faces don't lie. They always tell the truth. Thank you so very much for being such a beautiful, beautiful audience. Back to you, Sarah.
Thank you so much. And of course, let's go ahead and give a wonderful round of applause or by emojis, by Zoom, to our amazing speaker, distinguished Toastmaster, Dr. Author Marlene Smith. This has been such a wonderful session. I think we're all walking away with some great tips and some great things to continue to apply in our Toastmasters journey and also outside in our professional public speaking. Because if you think about it, as you mentioned also, it's such an important skill to have, and it really makes a difference in your career. It really does. I know we're also going to be posting a link to a survey so that you can all give us some feedback on what you thought of today's session. And also, of course, you can, Marlene, do we have your email? I know you mentioned that you wanted to, that you'd be open to sharing the presentation.
I will put it in the chat.
Perfect. And that way, anybody who would like to have access to the resources or to the presentation, they can go ahead and request that from Marlene and connect with her. Perfect.
I want to thank everybody for their great questions. I think it's just been wonderful. And as the butterfly, I will continue to grow. As everybody has here, I want to say a special thank you to Joe for showing up. And I met him several years ago at District 48 conference. And I had the honor of having him evaluate one of my talks where I was using the talking stick, and we talked about the talking stick. And I learned so much from Joe, and I still remember your great presentation there at District 48. So thank you very much for taking up my invitation and coming here today, Joe. He's talking tomorrow night, I think 6:30, am I correct, Joe? I think that's what it is. And please,
what will be his topic?
What is his topic? He's a keynote speaker, the topic of his choice. Joe, what is your topic?
It's entitled Dig Deep. And that's all I'm going to say.
That's a good sneak peek.
There you go. Great job, Marlene. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Thank you very much, Joe. I really appreciate your feedback in everything.
I also wanted to mention to everyone, we have a link in the chat, an evaluation link, so you can provide us feedback on what you thought of this session. And please go ahead and fill that out before you go. And I believe the link is going to be available for 24 hours. But again, with that, I wanted to thank you all for attending the 2022 District 47 Reimagined Conference. Please review the agendas. We have some fantastic workshops and speakers throughout the next couple of days. We also have our big contest coming up. And let's definitely stay connected through our conference app, which has been amazing and a lot of fun. They've made it challenging with these with the rankings. So go ahead and connect with everyone, fill all the requirements, and see your numbers go up. But again, I wanted to thank everyone. Thank you for the opportunity also to facilitate. I also wanted to thank our wonderful production team for being here today and giving us the opportunity to have this very smooth workshop today. So again, thank you everyone. We're going to stay here for a few more minutes and our room will be closing